Hello, and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your host and the Chaos Clarity coaching method. And today I'm super excited to have Renata on with me. And I'm going to let you, Renata, take it away and tell us who you are, what you do, and how long you've been in business.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you. So, hi, everyone. I'm Renata from Nourish with Renata. I'm an intuitive nutrition coach, which basically means that I help women figure out the foods that work best for their bodies. I find that in my own journey and with so many other women, when we're trying to become healthier and eat healthier, we look outside of ourselves so much. We're looking at Instagram and Facebook and the person down the road to figure out, well, how did they lose weight? Or how did, they improve whatever hormonal imbalances they might have? And instead of doing that, instead of giving away our power to something outside of ourselves, I really encourage women to tune into their bodies, to use their intuition to figure out what are the foods that help me to feel more energized, to have more vitality for life, to improve my digestive health and hormone balance and all that amazing stuff that we're often taught not to do. So it's a really personal journey so that women can be empowered with their nutrition. And so really, I've been in business for a little over 4 years now. And I love the light bulb moments that women are having when they figure out, like, yes, this is how I can eat that helps to serve me on not just the physical level, but the mental and emotional and spiritual levels too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And I feel like just as a woman, right? Like I've had 2 babies and I'll be 40 in a couple years. So like that transition of like late 30s is this weird, like, what is happening with my body right now? What is going on? So I think that's really important to like tune in, especially that you're encouraging people to tune in, because I think so often in life and in business, we usually have the answers that we need kind of like right in front of us, right? We have the answers for like that next step so close. And I think people just don't really realize that until someone like you comes along and says, well, like let's look inside. What do you need?
Right. Yeah. And I think it's also important to mention that, my training is with fitness nutrition. So
Yeah.
it's not like, and sometimes people get confused. They hear
Right.
like intuitive nutrition and they're like, well, that means that if I feel like eating donuts all day, then I'll just eat donuts all day. And it's not that. It's really tuning into like, what energy do I want to feel? What foods support that energy? And it's about knowing the science, the macros, the micros, and combining that with the feeling, the energy, the intuition to create a really holistic view of what you want your health to be and not what anyone else tells you it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, right, like that's also, I love that too, because the macros and the micros, like I've tried to do that myself and 10 out of 10 don't recommend, right? Like, because I'm like, read 3 things on the internet and I'm like, oh, I can do that too. And then I really can't. And maybe that's my toxic trait, is that I think I can do anything, right? Maybe that's a manifesting generator thing, right? Where I see something, I'm like, oh, I can totally do that thing. But it turns out I probably can't, right? Or I just need help. So, right. So that's where people like you come in and you can really help women like understand what is it that you're feeling after you eat the donut versus maybe what is it that you're feeling after you eat an apple, right? Like how do those make you feel? Which one gives you more energy, right? Like, and move forward from there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And the other important point to consider, which is not necessarily anything that I think we spoke previously about talking about, but it's also like the emotional component of food. So food
Mm-hmm.
is so emotional, and we keep thinking like, no, I need to be eating the exact same thing every single day, every single meal. And that's just not realistic. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we understand how we approach food in an emotional standpoint, then we bring mindfulness in. So then we can think prior to eating the donut, okay, am I trying to eat the donut because I'm feeling stressed out or frustrated, or my blood sugar level dropped too low because I haven't eaten regularly the last like few hours? So it really brings in this level of awareness that is so
Mm-hmm.
huge for our health. And so once again, this comes back to the tuning in and to feel, what does it feel like to feel good in my body?
Yeah. Ooh, that's so good too, because I think we don't realize how emotional food can be and how emotional it really is, right? Like, I mean, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I get really excited to get up in the morning and have like a cup of coffee. And like, I've been making our creamer, and like, so it's a little bit healthier than the stuff in the bottle, right? Where it's like, I know kind of what's going in there. And, but that gets me more excited for that. And I also feel better having made that little switch, right? Like, and
Mm.
knowing that, adding in some food with that has really helped me like not have those sugar crashes or those, that caffeine crash after a couple hours, right? So I think that is, like understanding all of that stuff combined is so important.
I love that. I love that you're having like a balanced breakfast with your coffee, by the way. So just like huge kudos to you. I love hearing that. So you're already knocking it out of the park.
I try. Like for a long time I didn't, and I would get up and I would just drink straight black coffee. It was the worst thing ever, right? But I was also at that point in my life, I was definitely just running everything to the max, like turn it up to 11 and I'm just going to go and I'm never going to rest. And I mean, that's a straight road to burnout. And that is absolutely what I experienced. So again, something I don't recommend is just turning it up to 11 and just seeing what happens, right? Like there are better ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because like how we're talking about chaos and chaos in our businesses,
Yeah.
definitely I resonate with that early on in my business. Because I mean, when you're just starting out, I didn't have any other, I literally didn't know any other female entrepreneurs when I started. So I was like starting from square one. And when you look online, when you look on Instagram and you're trying to find someone to be a mentor or to like look up to for inspiration, the majority at the time were males, and they
Mm-hmm.
had like now what's called like bro marketing,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, keep doing everything,
Yeah.
And so I got burned out doing that. Like, and that was part of the chaos in my journey, because I thought, well, in order for me to have a successful business, I need to do it exactly how they do it. I need to like balls to the wall. Doesn't
Yep.
matter if you have a family, doesn't matter like if you need sleep. Like it was literally like staying up till 2 a.m. every day, sleep for 3 hours, get up, work out twice a day, like eat these things, drink these things. Like it just got so overwhelming. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I needed that. Like, I needed to see what I didn't want
Right.
in order to figure out what I did want. And so that was, in a way, and upon reflection, really helpful, because then I kind of got this very masculine type way of approaching my business. And I swung completely to the opposite side, which was a very feminine energy type way of running my business, which was all about feel. And
Mm-hmm.
while that sounds amazing, perhaps in contrast to the very masculine, toxic masculine energy, it was also way unstructured.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just like, oh, I feel like I'll do
Right.
this, and not
Yes.
like really think it through. And as a
Mm-hmm.
result, I was like, well, why isn't money coming in? Or
Right.
like, why don't I have clients? And it was just like, I needed to see both ends of that spectrum and then
Mm-hmm.
find harmony between the masculine and the feminine energy in order to create a business that actually helps me move forward towards my goals.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I love that you bring that up, because I think the finding that yin and yang, right? Like the two opposites, right? You have to experience both. And I feel like everyone who's an entrepreneur does at some point in time swing all the way towards the masculine, the I'm going to pound this out. I'm going to talk to 100 people a day, make 100 offers a day. And then also swings to the very opposite side of like, I'm just going to think about it and it's going to manifest and come to me. Right. Where it's like, how about we meet somewhere in the middle? Like what feels best, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah. So what is something, and I know you said you that was a challenge, right? Going from one to the other, but what is something challenging, maybe in the eyes of that like switch from one to the other, something challenging that you've overcome in your business? And how did it affect you when you kind of made those swings from one side to the other?
Well, definitely one of the most challenging things was clients. So, as I mentioned, I'm a nutrition coach. So, obviously, clients is an integral part of my business.
Right.
And so, when I approached it from the very, very masculine way of doing it, it was like, I have a quota of people that I need to reach out to every day and like no holds barred, just like, aggressively talking to people. And that felt very out of character for me because I'm not like a super extroverted person.
Yeah.
And so it's exhausting, it's draining doing that, especially when you're like going at this relationship from the standpoint of I need to get something out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I swung to the complete opposite extreme, it was like you said, the let me think about it. And if I put out the right energy, then like people are just going to be like magically attracted to my style of coaching, even if I don't market myself or tell
Mm-hmm.
people what I do. Right.
Right.
And so obviously, with both ends of that spectrum, it was challenging because it wasn't an aligned way for me to have a steady outreach system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I ended up learning was I need to figure out what feels best for me and have some form of structure with it, as opposed to just like being one or the other end of the extreme. And
Yeah.
so, that was a huge learning curve for me because I do feel like, especially in business and online business strategies that you hear about, everyone's like, 5 steps to getting like $5,000 every day from clients that just magically reach out to you, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was really like, I'm not in it for temporary relationships. Like, I'm not in it
Mm-hmm.
to just be like, let me give you a meal plan, you go off and do it, and I don't talk to you again. Like, I'm really in this to impact women's lives. And that's a long term relationship. That's
Right.
not just I reach out to 100 people a day and then I expect a certain percentage to become clients. It's really like, how can I develop a deep relationship with women where they trust me and I feel like they're receptive to the guidance that I'm giving them too, in order to create a long-term relationship that is sustainable for their health. And so that's really kind of how that journey progressed and where it's at now.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I think that's something, if people who are listening are just starting out their journey, right? That's something to consider as like, how can I make this harmonious, right? Like, how can
Mm.
I, like, what feels best for me? And that's often what I tell a lot of clients who, they come to me and they're like, I haven't been able to connect with any clients. Nobody's in my DMs, right? And I'll ask like, well, what have you done to like cultivate relationships? Like how are you currently talking to people? And they're like, well, I post in groups and I'm hoping that someone's going to comment. And I'm like, oh,
That's
well,
one way.
that's
Yeah.
one way, but like, are you actively engaging in other people's posts? And the answer is usually no, which I I find that so funny. Like social media is called social media, so you can be social, right? So
Mm.
you can like interact with people. And I understand there are a million ways, right? That one of my mentors has 54 ways to connect with clients. That was one thing that he talked about. And I was like, dang, I didn't realize like I knew about like 10 of them and I'm like 54 and he's like, "Oh yeah, and there's like millions more." Right? So, if you're thinking of your challenges in your business from like I need clients, I have to get clients, like how can you reapproach that, right? Similarly, like what you did, how can I develop a strategy that feels good for me, right? That really taps into my own intuition, that is probably a little bit bro and a little bit feminine, where you can bring those two together, right? To really have that harmony of like, okay, I'm excited to show up. I don't feel burnt out. It feels easy for me to connect with people. And yes, there will be challenges for sure. But, like, how can I feel harmonious in my business?
I love that. I think that it's so important because it is a unique journey for everyone. Like, I'd love for it to be cookie cutter. I'd
Yeah.
love for it to be
Right.
super easy, where it's like, just do these 3 steps and then you'll be perfect. You'll be
Yeah.
making $1 million every day. But it's really, and you mentioned human design earlier, right?
Yeah.
In terms of being a manifesting generator. So I'm a generator. And so
Okay.
it's so important for us all, no matter what our design, to be living in that design, like to be authentic to the way that we are designed.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it, whilst also knowing that, like, for me as a generator, there is that thing where I respond. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
respond to people. Like, I'm
Right.
not going out to like initiate things. Like, I need to have that impetus come in and then I respond to it. So I love like bringing that into the strategy that you help to determine and define for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I mean, human design is a whole rabbit hole that like I can get lost in for so long. But really, for me, tapping into my own human design really, it gave me a permission slip to like do business how I wanted to, right? Because for so long, so many people would tell me, you can't do it that way. That's not how it's supposed to be done. And I'm like, but why? Why? It seems to be working for me. So like I'm going to continue doing this, right? And like from a manifesting generator standpoint, to get to try new things on, things that I'm excited about in my business, that feels so good. And there's so much client attraction that comes in when you're feeling good in your business. And I have other clients who, one of them is a reflector, and she's like, I've noticed when I do things that feel good in my business, clients come in. And I was like, yes, yes, do more of those things, right? And she's not like super into human design, but I've definitely like been coaching her with that in mind to help her be a reflection, right? Like she can reflect things back and I can reflect things to her. And that's so cool, right? When you're thinking about how to run your business. And that's just, again, that's just one way to be able to run your business in a way that feels good, but also to run your life in a way that feels good, right? Because somebody told me that business and life are always separate. And I'm like, no, not when you're an entrepreneur. Never, like, never. That there's always ebb and flow. So, really tapping into that, I think, is so important. And the intuition, right? Like if you're not into human design, the intuition of like, okay, this thing feels good to me. I need to fuel myself this way. That can really help grow things in such a cool way.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because I think it's important. Not everyone connects with a human design idea. And I think if they don't, then typically they're people that really need like the logic. They need like the tangible science behind it. And so
Right.
that's why I love to talk about oxytocin, which is one of like the feel good hormones in the body. And
Yeah.
it's so important for us as women. So we need oxytocin to help us to feel filled up and fulfilled and purpose filled. And also, it's the pleasure hormone. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like the love hormone, the cuddle hormone. Like, there's so many good things about oxytocin to
Yeah.
remember. And what's cool is when you are living your life and building your business on that stable foundation of happiness, it just means your oxytocin is high. So you're completely filled up. Your metaphorical cup is overflowing with
Yeah.
goodness and feeling good. And what I love about that is that's the science. Like, you can literally prove or show on a test how high your oxytocin level is. And
Sure.
what's cool about that in an energetic sense is, okay, if I'm feeling amazing, if I'm feeling fulfilled and I'm enjoying life and I have joy for so many things, then obviously as a client, you're going to gravitate towards that kind of person because they're
Right.
just loving life and they feel like that energy is something you want to be around more often too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love that. I love that so much because it just makes it easier, right? It makes it so much easier and so much more approachable, where it doesn't have to be this like crazy complicated thing. It can be super simple.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. I love that. So what is one business tip that you would tell someone who is either starting their journey into entrepreneurship or someone who is maybe feeling stuck in the chaos of things?
I would definitely say lean into what is pleasurable or passionate for you. So the reason why I say this is because, number one, when I started out my business, I loved food. And so originally, when I first started, I had a blog that I posted recipes to. There were healthy recipes that my family ate. And that was really how I got into the business. And sometimes we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to get stuck doing this one thing for the rest of my life. But what's really cool is that we get to evolve and we get to change and grow as we experience more of life. So for me, as that happened, I started to learn more and to really focus specifically on women's nutrition. And then even more so now, I'm really focused on cyclical health. So women's hormonal health is so important for me to help educate women around, because I do feel like it's an underserved area for women's health, or in healthcare in general. There's various studies and things that you can find online that show how much less women's medical studies are funded than men's, which is fascinating in and of itself. So my point being is the reason why I went from recipes to nutrition, to women's hormonal health, is because those were things I felt really lit up by. And
Mm-hmm.
what's been cool is when I've leaned into those things, it's resonated with so many more people. And I didn't do it because it was like, oh, let me try this thing that I think is really going to kick right
Right.
online. I really just decided, like, you know what, this feels like I need to focus on it. This feels like something I'm super aligned with. And I feel like I'm learning so much about it. I need to share this information with others. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's helped me to progress my business because it's something I'm super passionate about. And that's evident whenever anyone hears me talk about it. So even if you're stuck in the chaos, even if you're stuck in, like, you feel like you're in a plateau, keep leaning into that thing that feels passionate and purposeful and pleasurable for you. And I think that's going to help, because it has in my business continue the evolution of myself as a human being and in the way that I impact other human beings too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so, yeah, I resonate with that so much because I think, even for me, right, my businesses have shifted so much over the years, right? My first business that I started was a photography business, and I still run that, right? And that evolved into me taking yoga teacher training and purchasing a yoga studio. And that evolved into me developing a yoga teacher training, and that evolved into coaching. And like now here I am, a business coach, right? Like helping women really create offers and learn to be confident and talk to their audience. And all of those things over the last 16 years, like I've definitely built that up and learned how to network and talk to people and like, just connect with people who are good referral or collaborative partners, right? And then that has led to like just amazing word of mouth clients, which if you're in business and you start hearing about word of mouth, like that's like the holy grail of like people want that, right? And like in my area, I have that right now with the photography business, right? Where if you want a session with me, you have to like know someone who has my email address to like be able to email me.
You're in high demand. Not everyone
Yeah,
gets that email address,
right.
okay?
Yes. Ah, that's too funny. So what is a piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
Ooh, this is a good question. So I would say that what I would tell my younger self would be to keep believing in yourself. So I believe that, because I've talked to lots of women about this that are entrepreneurs, that it can be really hard to keep believing in yourself early on in your business, because your family members, your parents, your friends are asking you questions like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Or is that really going to bring you money?
Yeah.
Or, well, why don't you just go get a quote unquote real job,
Yeah.
And so that was absolutely my journey too. And it caused me to have real self-doubt. Like, maybe I
Hmm.
should just go off and get a quote unquote real job. Maybe this is a crazy idea that no one else is doing. Maybe I'm not good at sales, all these things that keep us small.
Right.
And so what I really would want to tell my younger self is the most important muscle that you can work is the muscle of self-belief. No matter
Hmm.
what anybody else says or does, or no matter how confused anybody is and questioning what it is that you're doing, if you can keep believing in yourself, that's going to pay off. That is
Yeah.
absolutely going to pay off no matter what.
Oh, I love that. And I think, yeah, as a So I've owned businesses for 16 years, and that's definitely one of the muscles that I've had to work the hardest is that self-belief, because even just in the last year, I've ran into people I used to work with in corporate. And I left my corporate job about 10 years ago. And the gentleman that I ran into, we were at a gala event that was happening here in the area. And I was taking photos there, and he's like, so how's that little photo business? And I was like, this little photo business has made over $1 million in the last 10 years. So that's how it is.
Joke's
And
on
he,
you.
right. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, oh, he's like, so it's not so little. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not so little. It's not at all. And he's like, wow. Um, I didn't think you'd make it past a year. And I was like, thanks. Well, I believe in myself. So bye. See you later.
Peace. Yeah.
Right? Like, and I almost didn't know how to answer because I was like, oh wow, like you didn't think, interesting. Like I totally just leaned into that belief that like, well, of course I'm gonna make it. Like if I don't like this, I'm just gonna shift into something else. Right. And it
Right.
was never like a belief that I would be like, I guess the worst thing that it could happen was that I would need to go back to corporate was like the worst thing, but I always knew that I would like find a way forward. And I'm
Mm.
like, I wonder how many other people had a bet that I would be back within a certain amount of time, right?
Wow. I think
Yeah.
that's so interesting. Well, I want to comment with two things based upon that share, which was profound, by the way. Like, I think it's important for us to remember whenever we meet someone that has that kind of reaction to our businesses, it's easy to be hurt by that, or it's easy to take it personally.
Right.
And through my own personal growth, which has taken many years, I feel like now I'm at the point where I can be like, oh, isn't that interesting that you would say that?
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
it's really
Same.
not about me, right? It's
Right.
really about their perspective on probably life, or
Hmm.
perhaps they're being triggered by something because maybe that guy wanted to start his own business and he just never had the guts to do it. And so he was like
Right.
kind of projecting
Yep.
that kind of stuff onto you. So I think it's really interesting to have that awareness and to be able to have that level of maturity and growth and be like, oh, how interesting that he thought that.
Yeah.
And it's neither good or bad, it's just like an observation.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I definitely had that. Like he said that to me. I had that, like, you know, just right out of my mouth without really even thinking about that, like, response. And then I walked away and I was like, oh, wow. All right. Like, pat on the back. Like, me, even 5 years ago, probably would have been like, oh my gosh, what if I don't make it? Right. Like, where it would have been like, oh no, so much scarcity, where now I feel like that has shifted so much.
So much. Yeah. The other thing that
Hmm.
I wanted to say is I feel like there are some people in our lives that we probably think of, and when they say they're going to do something, they they make it happen. So no matter what, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to do this." And then the next thing you know, they've done it. And I love thinking of that because for me, it's like the evidence. It's like this is the evidence of if I put my mind to something, it's going to get done just like this person did and they got it done. And so I think that's a really important perspective to have access to, like in terms of like mentally getting connected to that idea, or emotionally or energetically getting connected to that idea. Otherwise it can be really easy to fall into self-doubt. And so I
Right.
just love that because it's like, okay, who can I kind of like borrow some of that energy from and be like, okay, this is getting done, we're
Yeah.
doing it. And that just gives you that extra like pep in your step as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I feel like, to go back to human design as a manifesting generator, right? Where I get to have like both manifester that like initiate, like, come on, let's go, and the generator of like, let's go and do it, right? Like having both of those, like even before I discovered human design, people have told me your energy is like an energizer bunny. It literally just keeps going. And I'm like, if I'm excited about it, absolutely yes. If I'm not excited about it, no, I'm literally a dead battery and I don't want to do it, right? Like it won't happen if I'm not lit up about it. And so I think that like in discovering my human design, right, knowing that I have that power to help others, right, really get excited and understand what excites them to really elevate them, that like feels like such a cool superpower for me to be like, Yeah, I'm like your cheerleader. I'm over here like, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. And if you're like, but it doesn't feel right, I'm like, okay, let's switch. What are we going to switch to? Right. Where I just get so excited about that.
I love that. I feel the same way. Like I didn't before I learned about my human design, and people would also say the same thing to me about being an Energizer Bunny. And I was like, cool, let's do some stuff.
Right. Ah, that's too funny. That's too funny. All right. So my last question for you today is, if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
Ooh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is a wooden spoon. I feel like it's a super versatile instrument. You can use it in hot or cold. It's great for scooping things like ice cream.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what
Um,
I would pick. I just feel like it's super versatile. You can use it literally anywhere. I mean, everyone has a wooden spoon in their kitchen, and it's just like one of those trusty implements that you know you're going to use time and time again.
I love that. That's so good. This has been such a great interview. Renata, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So I'll link everything below, but go ahead and tell everyone the best place to get in contact with you and any links that you have.
Yes. Well, the best place to connect with me on a daily basis is my Instagram, and that is at nourish underscore with underscore Renata. Also, I have my website, which is nourishwithrenata.com. And on there, you can book a free 20-minute consultation with me. So we can talk about your specific health goals and figure out a strategy to help you to reach them, as well as things like gut health, hormonal health, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all things that I love to talk about.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I can't wait for everyone to listen. And thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
Wow. What a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.